So welcome everyone to One Quick Thing. I'm Caitlin Milliken, IL's multimedia editor.
And I'm Lily Millman, assistant editor here at Innovation Leader, and we're really glad we can have you here with us today.
A quick overview of Innovation Leader before we introduce our featured guest for this episode. Innovation Leader has created the world's biggest network of innovators who work inside large organizations. And we produce content, research, and gatherings like this one to help them learn from peers and deliver more impact in their organizations. We should also give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's episode, Doblin, a Deloitte business.
Doblin, a Deloitte business, is a global innovation firm that helps leading organizations find human-centered solutions to solve business problems. Together, their team solves complex challenges while helping organizations set their innovation strategy, build new businesses, and spur ongoing growth within their company. View their latest thinking on Doblin.com.
Thanks, Lily. Lily will be keeping an eye on the chat stream. If you have any questions, advice, or comments, feel free to chat away and we'll try our best to weave those in. And if you want to jump in via video in the second half of the meeting, let us know that in the chat. That's a great way to get your questions answered. I'm super excited to have Rajamannar as our guest today. Raja is the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at Mastercard. He's also the president of the company's healthcare business. To top it all off, Raja found time outside of his role at Mastercard to write a book. Quantum Marketing, Mastering the New Marketing Mindset for Tomorrow's Consumers just came out yesterday. In it, Raja explores how new technologies like IoT and 5G will change customers' lives and businesses' marketing techniques. Raja also has experience as a Chief Innovation Officer at Humana and Chief Transformation Officer at WellPoint. And with that very comprehensive introduction, thank you, Raja, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Caitlin. I'm very, very delighted to be here. And I'll share whatever thoughts I have, and feel free to go and ask me any questions.
Perfect. So just to start broad, tell us about your new book, Quantum Marketing. What do you cover, and what does the term quantum marketing actually mean?
See, if you look at the world of physics, physics is the science with which you try to understand how the phenomena around you work in the physical world. So how does gravity work? How does electricity work? Magnetism works, and so on. However, classical physics, which was being practiced for hundreds of years, has started failing completely when we discovered new spaces, like literally the outer space. It could not explain the phenomena, what's happening there, or inside of atoms, it could not explain. Or when objects were going very fast, approaching the speed of light, classical physics failed completely. So a new form or a branch of physics was formed called quantum physics, which would actually explain everything. And that's really the basis on which most of modern science is based on. In the same way, marketing has been practiced also for centuries, actually for more than 2-3 millennia. It's one of the oldest crafts. And marketing has been working quite well, but each time there is a technological revolution, marketing undergoes a transformation. So we have gone through 4 different paradigms or 4 transformations of marketing till now. And we are at the verge of the next paradigm, which they call the 5th paradigm of marketing. And it's going to be powered by a slew of technologies like artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, wearables, autonomous cars, Internet of Things, smart speakers, 3D printing, 5G, blockchains. It's like 24 technologies which are coming at us. They will change marketing completely. And the current classical ways of doing marketing will just not work. It's already beginning to fail. So you need a new way to reimagine marketing and reframe marketing, and that's what quantum marketing is. So the way I sort of look at the analogy is quantum physics to physics is what quantum marketing will be to marketing. That's how I'm approaching the whole thing. And so it's a pretty radical book, very provocative, and it challenges a lot of established concepts. Some people are horrified when they listen to it, but then I have got data to prove why I'm saying what I'm saying is correct. And I'll just give you one example, if I can stray for a minute, which is companies are spending billions, hundreds of billions of dollars every year on loyalty programs. Okay. Now, I read a report somewhere on BBC.com saying that if you look at people around the world who are in a committed relationship, either a marriage or a live-in relationship, a vast majority of them have admitted in surveys to cheating on their partners. And this is interesting because they have made an explicit commitment, or there is an implicit commitment that you would be loyal to your partner. And on the other hand, they're aware of the consequences of not being loyal. If they are caught, there is a reputational damage, there is a financial damage, there is an emotional damage to the people they care about. So in spite of making commitments and having consequences, they still stray. So my question is, if people in their real lives, I'm not making a value judgment. All I'm saying is if people in their lives are not loyal in the context where there are commitments made and there are consequences to not being loyal, still people are not loyal. Why the hell will they be loyal to brands? And why would we spend hundreds of billions of dollars behind loyalty programs? And I started sort of revisualizing what that new loyalty framework should be. I'm saying loyalty is absolutely dead the way we know it. It has to be totally different. It is all about managing preference of consumers at each point of interaction. So it's not like, I win a consumer and keep him or her for good with my brand. No, there are too many temptations. I have to win the consumer's preference every single time the consumer is about to make a decision. So I start questioning, does consumer research make any sense at all? My conclusion is no. I'm saying, is advertising, does it make any sense? And I'm the president of the World Federation of Advertisers. And I'm saying advertising, as we know, is dead.
So
and so on. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, to just connect it back to that emerging technology piece, how does working with blockchain or IoT or all of these new things in the market, 5G, help win consumer loyalty? How can that innovate the way that marketing is happening, essentially?
See, it needs to be totally reimagined, as I said. So for example, let's take smart speakers. Okay, smart speaker is not a iffy or a fluffy concept. It is here already. And more than 25% of the households in the United States, in the United Kingdom, Germany, and Japan already have a smart speaker in their household. And 70% of people surveyed have said that they made at least one purchase using their smart speaker in the last 12 months. The rate at which the penetration of smart speakers is going is very high. Now let's look at what happens in a smart speaker. So I want to buy, say, for example, some product. I want to buy diapers. So I say, hey, Alexa, I need to buy diapers. So Alexa would say, what do you want to buy? Pampers. I said, yeah. Okay, order has been placed. Now what happens is from the information seeking or discovery, all the way to purchase happens very rapidly. For example, I might not know, like I was recently buying some batteries. I didn't know there was something called Amazon Basics as a brand that they have, a house brand that they have. I didn't know, I couldn't care less. So when I asked for batteries, it says, so would you want to buy Amazon Basics? Normally I would not have, but there is an inertia in this process. I said, yeah, go ahead, go for it. And that's it. And then a whole bunch of Amazon Basics, those batteries came. The point is, in the classical marketing or traditional marketing, you would have something called a purchase funnel. There is awareness, interest, desire, action, satisfaction. There are those 5 stages which are there. That funnel collapses completely when you come in front of a smart speaker. So how do you then manage that situation? Number one. Number two, it's interesting that 70% of people who made purchases, which in turn is a 70% of the total households where there is already a smart speaker, they have said that the choice that was put in front of them, the first choice that was put in front of them by Alexa or by Google Home, is what they went with. Which means that the purchase process now, there is a new influencer or a gatekeeper or a decision enabler called Alexa or Google, which means they're getting further stranglehold over this whole process. Now, if I am a brand that I'm trying to market, how do I show up in that environment? Today, do I have the wherewithal? Yeah, I create some skills, but the damn skills are valid only when the consumer comes to those skills. But if consumer is not going to go to all the skills that are there, same thing like apps, they're not going to visit all the apps. So how do you really get in front of the consumer is one. Second, how do you get to the top of the algorithms? And without ceding my power or it becoming a negotiation of the lowest price as far as Amazon is concerned or Google is concerned, the dynamic is going to be totally different. And last point I would say on smart speakers is, today, brands spend a boatload of money to create and popularize their logos, right? And those logos are obviously the way to recognize the brands in consumers' minds. In a smart speaker, there is no visual real estate. You cannot show any logos. So how would you register the presence of the brand? So if the entire medium of interaction is voice or sound, you need to have sound logos or sonic brands. So
Right.
marketers have to think of sonic brands. So that's why the whole thing is changing so dramatically. And every single aspect of marketing ecosystem is going to be impacted, whether it is the blockchain or AI or all the other technologies that are emerging.
So you mentioned how these emerging technologies are going to shape the way marketing happens. Obviously, that involves spending time internally, testing new technologies, working with new technology. Do you have any best practices for exploring these types of emerging tech, and how have you approached that at Mastercard?
See, firstly, I always find that innovation happens fastest and greatest from small entities, because that's all they do. They're nimble, they're agile, they've got the fire in their belly. Having worked in large corporations and having managed innovation functions, I can tell you that some of the best innovations that I had were by partnering with these very small players from either Silicon Valley or Ireland or Poland or Israel or wherever, from other parts of the world. So one of the things I find is you should actively seek out for those kind of folks who are available, who have a legitimate IP right. That's very important for me as a large company. Number two, they need to have something unique that they can bring about. And so what happens is you can give a platform of scalability to them. They can give you access, either exclusive access or limited time exclusivity, whatever, on that particular aspect, which can be totally advantageous from a competition point of view as far as the company is concerned. So this is number one. Number two, I think many of the innovation people, I think they are very right-brained. They think outside of the box. They are thinking at things from a very different angle, etc. But the typical leaderships in most companies are left-brained. They're very structured. They're very quantitative. They're looking for ROI and stuff like that, right? I think there is a little bit of a mismatch between these two. The company would have lofty aspirations for innovation. They state the right things. But many of them have this lurking suspicion whether these innovation guys are a little fluffy and they are doing things which really don't matter. It is a very unfortunate reality that prevails in many, many, many companies that I interact with and I have seen in the past too. So the key thing is, it is critical for the innovation leaders to really cultivate the language of business and talk in business language on the one hand, but at the same time, they operate with their full right brain and inspire their teams or partner with outside entities to be able to get the right kind of creativity and right kind of commercial innovation, not innovation for sake of innovation, but scalable commercial innovation that makes a difference to the business. Easier said than done. I have seen multiple companies where they start off in a gung-ho kind of a fashion. Hey, we're going to start an innovation department. And then they bring somebody who is supposed to be very creative from outside. And very quickly, there is an organ rejection by the rest of the companies. These guys are too out there. And God knows what they're doing, and so on and so forth. And innovation gets strangled. So I think it's always critical to create a kind of an internal methodology in terms of marketing innovation in the company at one level. At the same time, the real innovation that happens a little shielded from the folks who really want to strangle the whole thing. So it's something which I have found consistently works. So I think the organizational dynamics management is much more critical than managing innovation by itself.
Great, thank you for that. I know we're going to cut really quickly to some quick sponsor announcements, and then we'll go to audience Q&A. I'll toss it to Lily.
So thank you so much, Raja, for those thoughtful answers. We're going to shift into the audience participation half of the show. So if you have questions you'd like to ask Raja, you can just drop them in the chat window and let us know if you'd like to be on camera or have us ask your question for you. And while you gather your questions, Caitlin is going to share a little bit more about the sponsor of today's episode.
Thanks, Lily. Doblin has spent over 35 years pioneering the science of human-centered design and innovation to the application of business challenges. Their latest report, Serving Small Businesses in a Time of Crisis and How Banks Can Help, reveals the financial service industry needs to show up more for small businesses and in different ways than ever before. This report explores the unmet needs of small businesses and the emerging opportunities and implications for financial services. Up next, the Doblin team will release How to Monetize Your Digital Bank, the path to a viable digital banking offering in times of COVID-19, and that will outline key winning principles in the digital banking space. The link to Doblin's report on small businesses will be in the chat for you to download. And with that, I'll toss it back to Lily, who's going to kick off the Q&A portion of the show.
I see George has a question, also turning the camera on and unmuting. Take it away, George.
Yeah, hey, Raja. That was excellent. In the few minutes that you had, you conveyed a lot of powerful messages. So thank you so much for that. So I lead an innovation program at I'm director of innovation at a 60,000 person company up here in Canada. And just curious, what are some of the methods that you've used in the past, whether at Mastercard or other organizations, to run either dedicated R&D teams, but also including the rest of the employees to really have an impact on the culture and to get buy-in across the organization? How have you kind of straddled both? Because that's definitely a challenge in front of me right now. Having success, but definitely a lot of challenges, especially if you throw a union on top of that. That doesn't help. But I'm curious as to your experiences in kind of balancing both dynamics.
See, a couple of things I would say, George. I think that's a very thoughtful question. Thank you very much. Firstly, when innovation is seen as a department, there is more of organ rejection. Okay, I always find that innovation, you should definitely have your R&D because the rest of the company does not have the, I would not say brains, but sort of, that kind of an orientation to be innovating, thinking outside the box, looking at things in a different perspective. So what the company needs is exactly that kind of a thinking. But what the company wants is very hardcore commercial connected to your product today and then how you can get to the market. So you have to really become a split personality, literally in some sense, which is you have to protect the entire area from the organization in many ways, give them the air cover on the one hand, and let them do what they have to do. But you need to get some quick hits that will keep the bean counters, and I'm saying it in a very facetious way. Right?
Yeah, I guess.
But that's a reality that we deal with, and I have been there hundreds of times. And for them, you need to give them a couple of quick hits to say, hey, you gave us something. Thank you for the budget. This is what we have done. This has got so much of promise. And let these guys do what they are doing. And when the opportunities come there, so second thing, so this is one part of it. The second one, which I always found is, it's a very weird psychology in any organization. If Josh, you go and tell your organization what a great job your team is doing, it's seen as self-serving and there is an immediate discounting, like your advertising. Nobody believes advertising. There is seen to be some kind of a conning involved in it. Unfortunate perception, but that's how it is. What I would always do is get somebody from outside to validate what I'm doing. Hypothetically, if you were to say, hey, you know what, there is the CMO of Mastercard, Raja. He has looked at our products and he thinks it's fantastic. And either ask me to write you a note, or even better, ask me to come and talk to your CEO and to your management committee. And of course, my role would not be to disintermediate you, but my role should be to actually stand you up very strong in your organization. So you need to find people like that who have an external credibility that your management would recognize and have them weigh in. The results of that in terms of acceptance of your own team by the rest of the company is going to be humongous in those situations. That's number two. Number three, I would actually create co-creation sessions. Nothing gets created in this co-creation sessions, I can tell you that. I'm being a little cynical about it, but that's reality. But it gives a feeling of involvement and a collective ownership to what is happening. And there was also a newfound respect for the innovators, that it is not that easy to come out with something outside the box. So when you say, okay, hey, here it is, let's take a problem, and we would like to do a small innovation co-creation session, and call the people from finance, call the people from HR, call the people from IT, wherever it is that you think you need the support from, get them involved, let them tackle a project, watch the fun, let them understand what it means to create. And when some ideas are thrown in, I think it really will help one hell of a lot. I have seen that work time and again. The last thing I would do is probably take your management on a tour, either to Silicon Valley, take them to Google, take them to Facebook, take them to some companies, right? Like, for example, at Mastercard, we receive a number of companies which come and actually, we have, I don't know if you know it or not, but we have got, I believe, one of the top three companies in the world in terms of patents on blockchains. Normally, Mastercard and blockchain, you might not think in the same breath. Yeah. We got so many innovations that we have got. We got patents filed in AR, we got patents filed in VR, and connecting the dots between various parts of the ecosystem and so on and so forth. So we'll be very happy to receive folks who are coming from outside, because for our teams, it is a question of getting a pat on the back from outsiders on the one hand, and from outsiders, it's a way for them to socialize this concept of innovation amongst their management people.
Excellent. Yeah, if I can make a comment, George, we use that. I use that strategy about the outsider and to highlight the importance of the outsider point of view, because in some cases when I'm a research guy, the people say, "Oh, this is a problem. Oh, research guy, I'm gonna take care of that." No, we are stuck in some cases, and that you can use that strategy to highlight how important is the outsider approach, and you can find zillion of examples of that outsider, how to solve that issue that research guy cannot solve. I use that strategy a lot, highlight the importance of the outsider point of view, and that maybe could be helpful for your problem right now.
For sure. And it's just funny because I know Doblin is the sponsor of today's event. So I've had discussions with Doblin because we do a lot of work with Deloitte. So definitely, and vice versa, I've had teams come into our physical space and speaking about kind of our process and methodology is kind of a pat on their back, right, as well. So yeah, definitely, Raja, I really, those are excellent points that you bring up. And yeah, I can talk forever about this, but I'll let the rest of the folks ask questions.
Thank you.
So we have a question from JP in the chat who says, with compressed purchase decisions and reduced switching costs like 90-day refunds, competitive contract buyouts, etc., how can brands build trust with customers in categories that are traditionally high consideration, like financial, telecom, or energy products?
I think it is easier to build trust in high consideration products as opposed to impulse purchases. Okay. What you need to really understand here is the psychology, how the brain works, right? Now, there are various theories of the brain. When you talk of system 1 thinking and system 2 thinking, system 1 is more spontaneous. It is more the feeling part of your brain, how it works. Most of us think that we are rational human beings and make decisions from our rational part of the brain. In reality, there is no bigger kidding than that. It is your system 1 thinking, or what at one point it used to be referred to as primal brain, which is what makes decisions. Primal brain is spontaneous, intuitive, and if you appeal to it consistently in a manner that your brand or your company gets that kind of an emotional space occupied in people's hearts or in that primal brain, that's where trust actually builds. And once you have got that trust, it offsets a lot of other disadvantages that keep consumers churning, right? And that's something which, interestingly, many marketers or many companies don't pay attention to. How many of marketers have studied neurology? Very few, right? And we have actually done, I would say, so much of study right now about neurology and how the brain thinks and how it feels and how it works, that we have put a whole lot of things on their head. We actually concluded that a lot of advertising is useless. And we used to spend billions of dollars on ads. We moved away in 2014, 15 significantly from traditional advertising. We are not completely dark. We still advertise quite a lot, but the nature of advertising has changed. And we moved into experiential marketing quite a lot because we are trying to build. Because today, just imagine when you go to a bank and you want your credit card, for example, you don't say, give me a Mastercard. You just say, give me a credit card. And you don't even notice half the time whether it is Visa or a Mastercard. Right? In that kind of a scenario, how do you really build the brand and create the pull is what is the fascinating thing. And we have done a ton of stuff. And also the proof point is for us, when I took over the brand Mastercard, when I inherited it as the chief marketing officer, it was at number 87 in the top 100 brands. It was still a top 100 brand in the world. Today, it is at number 10. The point being that we are making our strategy work and we are seeing the results come in. So that's my long-winded answer to the question.
My question for you, Raja, I know in your book you talk about how data is a really important part of new marketing. And I wanted to know, do you have to work with consultants who have that background in data? Should teams be hiring more folks internally to work at the company who can do data, or is there training for people who already exist and already are at the company? What's the best strategy for building that data capability?
See, for me, data is becoming a core competency for any company. You cannot outsource or abdicate your core strategy formulation to a consultant. That's my belief. We need to create, we need to own it, and we need to drive it. And to do that, you need to have the right talent. So we hired some of the best data minds out there, number one. Because we could afford, we also acquired almost 6 data companies. 2 of them, they specialize in artificial intelligence, and 4 of them are the traditional data analytics companies. And some of them have got some unique, I would say, IP. So we have been therefore blessed to have a ton of data analysts, data scientists coming into the company through those acquisitions. Second, as a user in marketing particularly, you need to understand what to do with the data, or how to make sense out of the data, what questions to ask, and when answers are given, to get your head around those answers and know what to do with them. So you need a level of training. Again, data is totally left brain. Classical marketers are completely right brain. So the two, it's very difficult to find somebody who transitions both. So we actually went and found a few people of that sort who are like, we call them the mini Leonardo da Vinci's. They work on both the creative side and the analytical side. Get them in, put them in between the marketers and the data analysts, and then they do the translation. They're the routers in some sense, and they do a brilliant job. So that's something which has helped us. We did some level of basic training, and it's very difficult because even with the best intentions, there is no learning agility for some folks where it concerns data. They just, the moment they see numbers, they they see stars in their eyes and then they switch off. So you cannot blame them because that's how they are wired, right? So the key thing is to create those kind of training programs, at least for those people who have got a little bit more aptitude in that space. So that's how we have been actually navigating. We don't really believe in having consultants for specifically data analytics itself because we got so many people now and with all these acquisitions. So that would be my answer.
Interesting. You mentioned being able to ask the right questions when it comes to data. I think sometimes teams find that there seems to be a lot of noise. There's so much information going in. Do you have any insight into the process of finding the right questions to ask when you're approaching, this large data set that has to do with your customers?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, marketers are not even aware of the possibilities that data can actually put in front of you. So I had some of my peers to come in from other companies and talk to my team, saying that what do they do with their data? And then we actually literally put together a compendium of many questions that my marketing team has to be able to ask, right? And they should act. And some of them, they say, oh my God, I didn't realize that this is what data can do for me. So it opens up the eyes when they see other companies in action, number one. Number two, we also had the colleagues from the new acquisitions come in and then tell us how they have actually served their clients in the past. That again shows you possibilities. So both, the newly acquired as well as the external ones. The third thing, we have sent a number of people to training at companies like, at organizations like the ANA, which is the Association of National Advertisers here in the US, or with WFA, which is there out of Belgium, and it's more European and global. So we have been actually trying to do that kind of a thing. And we also had some academicians, professors come and talk to us as well. And this is basically to open the minds of the people. And as I said, the people who are the routers or the in-between folks, they are the ones who help handhold and sort of interpret things for them. And if, for example, I as a marketer have a question, I ask in plain language, plain English. So, but then that has to be converted to the text speak or the data speak. And then with the data speak answer comes, this person actually gives you the marketing speak or the plain English speak. So this is how we have been doing it. Again, easier said than done. I would not say we have reached our destination by any stretch of imagination, but we are slowly moving in the right direction.
Great. I do want to put out one final call for questions. If anyone in the chat has anything they want to ask Raja, while I ask my final question. So you have this Chief Innovation Officer and Chief Transformation Officer background. What are some of the lessons that you brought from those two previous roles into your position at Mastercard that has affected the way that you view doing communications and marketing for that brand?
So, for example, one of the biggest learnings is innovation is not random. It is process driven. It has to be very thoughtful, purposeful, and intentional. And I brought some of that discipline to marketing, because marketing is also not random. When you're coming up with a beautiful new campaign, it is not just random creativity. It's not an art. It is a commercial art. So that commerce part of it is missed many times, whether it is on the innovation side or on the marketing side. So one of the key things is to make sure that the commerce part of it is firmly ingrained into everything we do. So that's number one. Number two, in my previous roles, interestingly, I worked with Doblin. And I worked with a few other companies in my previous roles, and some of them have got some fantastic frameworks in terms of how to go about your own innovation process. And I have brought some of those to marketing here. Number three, I started saying that marketing, innovation is not a department, it is a culture. So how do you democratize innovation? How do you make sure that people anywhere in the company can come up with ideas? And do we have a process to receive those ideas and to bring them to life in a very interesting way? Believe it or not, one of the concepts that we are right now in the process of advanced stages of pre-testing is something which came from the finance department, from the treasury department actually, saying that, how about this particular kind of a thing? We said, wow, that's very, very interesting and very cool. So what we do is then once we get that, we give an award to that person. We stand up the person and then celebrate. And everyone then starts seeing the possibilities. Now, there are many people who are now supporting with ideas for marketing, not just from within marketing. And it's fun because you get a different level of collaboration from these people as opposed to taking potholes at marketing. So it's just really cool and fun.
Great. And this is our final audience question from Jose. Which skills have been the most useful during your innovation journey?
I would say it is about managing culture, right? It's about the culture more than anything else. There are innovation specialists, there are innovation experts, but to give them the air cover and enable them their success to integrate into the company, that requires a lot of cultural navigation. And I think that's the most important skill that you need to have as a leader.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Raja, for your time today. We're so glad to have you on our show. Thank you, everyone, for your thoughtful questions, and have a great rest of your Wednesday.